President-elect and former President. Thank you. Donald, congratulations.
Thank you.
And looking forward to having like we said, a smooth transition. Do everything we can to make sure you're accommodated, what you need. And we're going to get a chance to talk about some of that today. So
good.
Welcome.
Thank you
back.
very much. And thank you very much. And politics is tough, and it's in many cases not a very nice world, but it is a nice world today, and I appreciate very much a transition that's so smooth. It'll be as smooth as it can get, and I very much appreciate that, Jim.
You're welcome. Thank you all.
Former President and President-elect Donald Trump and Joe Biden met for nearly 2 hours today in the White House in a cordial meeting. They shook hands and sort of talked back and forth. We were only very briefly in there, didn't get to say much or hear much. Heard President Biden call Trump both former president and Mr. President and President-elect before he finally settled on Donald. And he said that there would be a smooth transition. And Trump was sort of very gracious. They shook hands, and Trump said that politics could often sort of be a bad world, but it wasn't today, and that this was very positive. And he said, thank you, Joe. And he said that the transition would be as smooth as it could be. I think that it was a little bit different from 2016 when Trump first came to the White House as president-elect with Obama and seemed a little bit sort of nervous and subdued. This time, he seemed to be more in his element. He seemed to, he's coming back to a place he knew pretty well. But he was also sort of very gracious and didn't really get into sort of the back and forth with Biden at all.
Okay, so today, President Biden met with President-elect Trump for approximately 2 hours in the Oval Office. White House Chief of Staff Jeff Zients and incoming Chief of Staff Susie Wiles joined the meeting. It was a substantive meeting, an exchange of views. They discussed important national security and domestic policy issues facing the nation and the world. President Biden also raised important items on Congress's to-do list for the lame duck session, including funding the government and providing the disaster supplemental funding the president requested. Finally, the president reiterated what he said to the president-elect the day after the election and to the American people in a Rose Garden just last week. We will have an orderly transition and a peaceful transition of power. The president wanted to share with all of you, so certainly that everything that I'm saying is sanctioned. He wanted you all to know that the president-elect, again, was gracious, came with a detailed set of questions. It was, again, substantive. But I do want to take a little bit of a step back here because it's really important to note, and you're going to hear me continuing to say this over and over again, the importance of having a smooth transition, an importance of having an orderly transition. The president respects the will of the American people and wants to make sure that occurs. That is what he believes the American people deserve. And so that is as far as I can go. That is what I am sharing with you from the president directly. Business.
Can you say how President Biden answered some of those detailed questions?
I will say that the president certainly looked forward to the meeting, appreciated the conversation, and answered any questions that the president-elect had, offered up his thoughts, but I'm not going to go any further than that. I'm not going to go into details. Maybe the president-elect will speak on his behalf on what he wants to share. Look, they met for more than 2 hours. They met for a very long time, or nearly 2 hours, pardon me. And I think by the length of the meeting tells you that they had an in-depth conversation on an array of issues. And so, look, the president reached out to the president-elect wanting to make sure that he gave an opportunity to the president-elect, afforded him that opportunity to have a meeting with him to talk about the different issues that matter to the American people. But nearly 2 hours says a lot about how the meeting went.
Challenges that are ahead for the country, or potential solutions, any areas of agreement?
I'm not going to go into details of what was on the list. I shared that, and the president wanted you all to know that because we want to be very clear. It was actually a substantive meeting, nearly 2 hours. There was a lot discussed. There was a lot of back and forth. And I'm not going to go into specifics. I think if the president-elect wants to share his set of questions to President Biden, he certainly can and will if he chooses. But wanted to give you as much information as I could without going into too much specifics on a private conversation.